This is an Empty Closet Radio podcast. Get more at facebook.com/emptyclosetradio.
Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sam.
And this is The Empty Closet.
The show for everyone, whether you're in the closet
Or out and proud.
or somewhere in between.
.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam. Sam, this week has been really, really hectic. We're getting into the silly season, but there is something really cool coming up. What is it?
So for those of you who are long-time listeners, you might remember that the 1st of December is World AIDS Day, which is a big day in the community.
Big day of like doing stuff and remembering stuff, and it can be quite emotional. So we're going to talk a bit about that. We're also talking about what else is coming up in and around Cairns City. So stay tuned. You're on 101.9 Coast FM. If you'd like to listen to our show more, make sure you get our podcast. So if you go to your favorite podcasting app on your smartphone, search for Empty Closet Radio, hit the subscribe button, and you'll be kept up to date with all of our episodes, and you'll be able to listen back to the ones that we've had previously, all 150 something of them. It's way too many to count. What are the other ways people can get in touch?
So if you search for us on your favourite social media, particularly the big blue book of faces, just look for Empty Closet Radio, hit the like button, or you can also find us on the blue Tweety Bird. If you like your news in short chunks, just look for at Empty Closet _AU, all lowercase. Andrew has something to say.
Pretty much, like, if you're on that platform, clearly all you're following is Donald Trump tweets.
You're on 101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam.
You don't know what you talk about. It's all lies that come out.
Empty Closet Radio. Listen to us using your TuneIn radio app on your smartphone. Very smart.
You don't know about me. You don't know about me.
101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam. Now, Sam, I want to say that this radio station is volunteer run. So there's lots of people here that do lots and lots of volunteer work. And I've been involved with lots of volunteer stuff for a while now. I really find it rewarding. What volunteer stuff have you done in the past?
So, aside from the radio station, I have done a lot of volunteer work when I was growing up with things like Surf Lifesavers. So I did a lot of volunteer patrols and things like that when I was in high school. I've done volunteering for door knocking for charities and for Neighbourhood Watch staff, and volunteering my time for a lot of things in the rainbow community as well.
What are some, like, I mean, that's obviously a lot of time spent doing things that you don't really get paid for. So what are the reasons why you do them?
So for me, volunteering, there's the noble reasons and I guess the less noble reasons.
Oh, let's go for the less noble ones first.
Well, they're not bad. It's just that I enjoy the social aspect. Sometimes there's non-monetary rewards, which are a nice bonus. So like, you know, quite often you'll go to something and someone will put on a sausage sizzle, or there'll be pizza, or, you know, for instance, if you donate blood, you know, afterwards you get biscuits and juice and, you know, things like that. And all that kind of stuff is a happy bonus. But for me, aside from the social side and aside from the contact with people and doing fun things and learning new skills and being able to put that on my resume, because it makes me a marketable worker, because look how hard I can work, you know, without having to be paid to do it.
But, oh my God, I'm so glad that you touched on that about being able to put stuff on your CV, because there's so many volunteers that don't put their experience onto their CV, and probably should, because there's not a huge amount of difference between performing a task when you're not paid and performing a task when you are paid to do it.
except that one looks more motivated than the other. I did totally forget one of my favourite things that I volunteer for that has lots of bonuses, is SES. So SES, you learn stack loads of new skills, you make a lot of new friends, but and they give you all this equipment to do all your work, but you don't get paid to do it. But the other more noble thing is I really like, when I have the energy, when I have the time, I really like to give, not just in a monetary sense, to things that I really care about. Like, I really care about, helping people get back on their feet after storms. I really care about the rainbow community. I really care about, safety of people and all different things that I've put time and effort into over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that touches on a really important thing where a lot of volunteer jobs are, I like to call them love jobs, like you do it for the love. And I think most people that I really respect and look up to, they have like one paid job, which is like their work, and the other job is like their love job. And so, you know how you hear about people saying, times were tough. I worked 2 jobs when I was growing up just to make ends meet. I'm like, how lucky are we that like maybe we're still working 2 jobs, but like one of them we can do without any pay?
Well, I think in that situation, half the time you end up with people doing 3 jobs, and 2 of them are the paid jobs and one of them's the love job.
Yes, that is also something that can happen.
But I do find it very rewarding. And even the things you get back where people just say thanks for you putting your time and effort in.
I had like the most amazing experience when I was doing some volunteer work for Red Aware, which is this was in Victoria. I don't know if Red Aware exists anymore, but basically they went around and did like sexual health education, and we went to this festival, and I remember this moment was like scarred in my life forever, where I had to learn from the person who was working with me on the stall. I had to learn how to use a dental dam so they had all these vegetables to demonstrate how to put on the different forms of protection. And so like obviously they had like bananas and cucumbers and like carrots for the boys, and they had a papaya cut in half.
Which makes sense for the penis havers, Andrew. But the papaya, yeah, excellent model for an external vulva, because I was like thinking like rock melon. I'm like, no, it's going to be too hard.
No, it was like it was like the perfect consistency and the like roughly like an okay shape to demonstrate how to use the barrier method. Do you think I've ever been able to eat papaya ever since?
Well, I was going to ask, did you enjoy papaya, and can you eat it now?
I haven't actually had heaps of it, and it's only just recently that I've started actually being brave enough to try some, but I always get someone else to cut it up for me.
That's terrible. Terrible. You're on 101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam.
Empty Closet Radio. Like us on Facebook.
You're on 101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam, and we've been talking a bit about volunteering, about why we do it, about Andrew learning skills that he hasn't yet used, to the best of my knowledge. But Andrew, you were doing some volunteering today. Today is Tuesday, by the way.
Yeah, for anyone who's listening on the podcast, because you can access our podcast any day of the week. Today's Tuesday, which is when we go to air. And I've gone straight from my volunteering thing to here. And what I was doing was, not as exciting as learning new uses for papaya. However, possibly just as rewarding in a different kind of way. So, I was out at the Smithfield shops, and we had a little table and a whole bunch of brochures and a whole bunch of like gear that had red ribbons on it. And the red ribbon is the symbol that's used for World AIDS Day. World AIDS Day is coming up on the 1st of December. So all through this week, the World AIDS Day Committee have arranged for people to be in the shopping centres, like selling little red ribbons. Kind of not really selling them. It's more like make a donation and take a ribbon. And a lot of the ribbons have been made by our local volunteers, so it's certainly something that you can get behind. So I've been spending my day doing that and introducing myself to all these random people that are just walking past being like, hey, have you heard about World AIDS Day? And getting weird looks.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it's a good thing and it's successful and you're clearly not hawking stuff, I think people get used to trying not to make eye contact with people at stalls at shopping centres because they're afraid they're going to try to sell them expensive body wash or something.
Yeah, no, it's not expensive body wash. It's really like, it's more like a fundraising exercise to raise some money to pay for some good work that's being done in the community, which we'll talk about in a little bit of time, because our local charity is doing some amazing work here in Cairns.
Now, before we get to that, we do need to talk a bit about what World AIDS Day actually is, because I'm not sure if we actually covered the history of it last year or the year before when we talked about it, and it is really important. So, Andrew, what is World AIDS Day?
Well, maybe one of the reasons why we didn't cover the history of it so much is because it's actually been around a hell of a long time. So, World AIDS Day was established back in 1988, and that, as you may recall, was, if you know anything about your health history, you know how they have like art history. Is there such a thing as health history?
There is. It's fascinating, but let's not get too into that.
Okay, so 1988, just to paint a picture, it's like the AIDS pandemic. People are like crying out for assistance. There's people dropping dead left, right and centre in the developed world from this disease that we didn't have a proper understanding of, and there was no solution. So what we did was we decided to designate a day to try and raise awareness and also to try and raise some money to help the people who were slowly degenerating and needing some really practical assistance.
Now, for those who don't understand, and for people our age, it's really hard to grasp this, at the time, well, you know, AIDS was the tuberculosis of its day. And for those of you who are not little science geeks like me, basically, if you got it, it was a death sentence. But it wasn't just a death sentence, because by that stage, cancer was a death sentence, but getting AIDS in the same way of getting something incredibly virulent like tuberculosis meant that you could no longer usually be in contact with your family. It meant that you were shunned by your friends, your community, you'd lose your job. So not only were you going to die, and you were not going to die a quick, pleasant death, but you actually lost everything around you, and there was this massive stigma for the community. So it was horrendous. There's not really an equivalent for us in Australia now at our age to understand what it was like to be part of the community then, and that's part of why the raising awareness thing was so important.
But it's not just an Australian thing. So World AIDS Day, as the name might suggest, is a worldwide thing. It's actually one of the very few international days that is sanctioned by the World Health Organization. They only have like 8 specific days throughout the whole year, and World AIDS Day is one of them. That's very important to our community.
It is, and it's not, and the thing to remember is as well, it's not just important to the rainbow community. It's clearly not a disease that just affects gay people, despite what the stereotype says. It is something that can affect anyone and everyone throughout the world. So really important stuff.
So they've had a few wins throughout the history of World AIDS Day. One of the biggest, most significant things is that in 1995, the President of the United States made an official speech on World AIDS Day, and I think that started a bit of a tradition. So now most world leaders will say something to the topic on the day. Now,
you've got to remember the other reason that was particularly important is because there were a lot, and there still are a lot of politicians who basically were like, oh, you know, this is God's punishment or some rubbish. So the public acceptance by world leaders that this is an important thing is really, really good.
We'll talk a bit more about your experience of World AIDS Day after this track.
You're the object of my desire. You lift me up and take me higher. There's no doubt.
Empty Closet Radio, because no one else wants to be stuck in the closet. God.
101.9 Coast FM, you're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam. We've been talking about World AIDS Day, which is coming up on the 1st of December. Now, Sam, you said before the show it's been 10 years since your first World AIDS Day. Can you share with us, what was your first World AIDS Day like?
Okay, so you need to take yourself back and imagine me smaller than I am now, you know, 20 years old. No, less than 20 years old.
I'm imagining like small Sam with Bambi eyes and sweet and innocent flowing hair.
Well, I mean, it was bushy, but yeah, sure. So this was at the end of my first year at university, and my undergrad was an accelerated degree. So that meant that I took extra subjects, and it meant I worked through all my breaks. And my summer semester, one of my subjects was a research project.
It also meant that Sam was like way smarter than me because I did not do any of that stuff. Summer subject. Yes, go ahead.
So originally my thesis was going to be, because one of my particular areas of interest is infectious disease. One of my other particular areas of interest, even at that stage, was sexual health. And originally it was going to be what's the most recent research, what's the most recent candidates for a vaccine for HIV. And at this stage there wasn't much, because most of it had already been proved ineffective. So I was looking at research within the last 4 years of that point. And so we played around with the question a bit, and the basic idea was like, what's the latest in the treatment and prevention of HIV? And there's little baby uni student Sam wandering through the streets of inner city Brisbane going, I cannot figure out how the hell I'm going to find this information, because I couldn't get a really broad range without really understanding what I was researching. And I'm walking down the street and I can hear this music going. And I start to see all these people dressed in red, and all these red feather boas, and all these red umbrellas. And then this massive, like she was so tall, drag queen came out of nowhere, bedecked in lots of glittery red, and gave me a red umbrella, a giant red umbrella. And I keep going down and I get around the corner, and it's one of the parks in the centre of Brisbane, just near the casino. And it was World AIDS Day, and there was live music, and there was a display of, all the posters regarding HIV education, you know, throughout history, and talking about how Queensland's response was and Australia's response, and so on and so on. And there were all these little tents with information, and I was like, oh, answers to everything I've been looking for. And I was like grabbing all the brochures.
Literally everything you've been looking for, the answer's right there.
Well, it gave me all my search terms to plug into my search engines.
Yeah, because I imagine when you type in, like, AIDS vaccine, it, like, brought up a whole bunch of, like, hate speech.
Well, I was not using the Google foo. I was using the academic searching journals, but I was really having trouble without using specific, like, protease inhibitors and so on and so on. And so,
without using specific long sciencey words.
Yeah, pretty much. And I was like, where are the sciencey words to be found? And Wikipedia was not giving me answers at that stage.
No, and often Wikipedia gives you the wrong words anyway.
Yeah, so, but it was a real joyous day. Like, I actually stayed around all afternoon because it was amazing. It was a real joyous day, but it was really touching and meaningful. You know, they had the memorial, they had people there who were affected, and just everyone was just so friendly.
Yeah, and I think one of the things which which has really come across in what you've been saying is about the sharing of knowledge that happens on this day, and also during the whole month, really, and the lead up to World AIDS Day. It's like the perfect opportunity to share with people our understanding of HIV as we know it. And you might hear people using the term HIV and AIDS a bit interchangeably around this time because it is called World AIDS Day, whereas generally you don't hear people using them interchangeably.
Now, for those of you who don't understand the difference, because it is an important difference, HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. So it's actually the name of the thing that infects you. Right? It's not a name of a disease. Now, you can be infected with HIV and not have AIDS. So your viral load can be low enough and you can be healthy enough that you don't have acquired immune deficiency syndrome, which is AIDS. So AIDS is the name of the disease that comes after the infection. You can't have AIDS without HIV, but you can have HIV without having AIDS.
And a lot of people, the story for a lot of people in westernized countries, particularly in Australia where treatments are readily available, we're going to talk a bit more about that later on in the show. If you do become HIV positive, it doesn't progress to AIDS very rapidly. So most people live a very, very normal life.
And I mean, even that's, you know, when I was looking at it 10 years ago, as much as it was much better than it was, people still got to AIDS, whereas now people don't necessarily. There's these amazing, I could rant all day about how amazing scientific advances are, but we best go to a track. You're on 101.9 Coast FM, you're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam.
Empty Closet Radio, facebook.com/Empty Closet Radio.
You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam. Sam, you know, you could watch the TV and be fooled into thinking, I believe a politician said this, that there are no gay people in Queensland.
Was that politician going to walk backwards to Brisbane if there were gay people in his electorate around Mount Isa?
I think he's totally like shuffling. He's doing a backwards shuffle like right now, even if it's not literally, figuratively. Anyway, so let's talk about what's actually happening with HIV in Cairns. And I want to be clear that HIV is not just something that happens to gay people. HIV is something, it's a virus. It doesn't actually choose your sexuality. It doesn't choose you because of any other factor. It's literally a virus that could affect anyone.
And it's not, you know, people don't fail as people. They're not dirty, and that's why they get it. Anybody can get HIV, you know.
That, yeah, and in fact, people that do have HIV are not dirty. There was a big campaign about that. Let's talk about that later. So how many people do you reckon there are in Australia that are living with HIV? And when I say living with HIV, I mean they have positive diagnosis and are living with the medications every day, living quite normal lives. How many people do you reckon?
More than 20,000?
Ah, Sam, so close. It is a tiny bit more than 20,000. So 25,000 people in Australia. And the thing that most of them are on treatment. They know what the situation is. They know what's happening. But there is 10% of those people that may not be aware that they have HIV. And that means that they're at risk of passing it on to other people, because if you know you have it, you can do something about it. If you don't know you have it, you can't do anything about it. So this is kind of an important statistic. So then we have some other statistics here about what's happening here in Cairns. In 2015, so I mean it's a couple of years ago, but still, let's use these statistics. About 29% of new HIV diagnoses were diagnosed late. So that means people perhaps weren't having regular checkups at the sexual health centre, and there's a period of time where like they didn't know that they had HIV and could have been passing it on to other sexual partners maybe, or other if they were participating in other high risk activities like sharing needles, which is a terrible thing to do. Then they could have passed it on to their friends. So still quite alarmingly high statistics. how many people do you think, so the only thing that we can measure really is like how many new diagnoses there are, because once you're diagnosed as positive, like then we can, you know, the health system has their way. They have their way with you. They put you onto treatment, and then you can do something about it. You can be you have control. You can become undetectable, and then you don't pass it on to other people. So this is why we measure how many new diagnoses there are.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And one of the measurements that we use is the new diagnosis. One of the great things about the stats for CANS is, for a while there, we were going down. Like, we had a downwards trend. Like, you know, one year we had 20, the next year we had like maybe 15, you know. And then something weird happened. There's like a little bit of a spot where it plateaus, and then suddenly we start having more diagnoses. So in 2015, we had round about like 18. And then in 2016, we had around like 26. I'm reading the numbers wrong. 26, which is a huge jump in 1 year.
It is. And I think that I wonder how many of those are diagnosed late who perhaps don't know when they were infected.
It's so hard to know whether it's like the messaging just breaking through about going and getting tested, or whether it's genuinely people just like getting around to it when they get around to it, you know.
Yeah, and look, I do want to point out a couple of positive things about this. Number one, for a city this big, this is actually still pretty low, really, for a yearly diagnosis rate. But the other thing is, we really want to aim to have everybody diagnosed. Like, we'd much rather have 30 people diagnosed than 5 people diagnosed and 25 new infections who don't know, you know. So I don't know whether it's a bad thing that it's gone up. It could be that it's just people being more aware. But if you are sexually active, if you are participating in high risk activities, if you have partners who perhaps, or a partner who you don't know their history, or they participate in risky activities, then you need to get regular checkups. You don't want to be the one who's 5 years down the line going, why am I so sick?
Yeah, definitely not. So after this, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to take control of the situation.
We thought it outlasted. Can we go home? I'm tired. Are we liars?
Empty Closet Radio, because no one wants to be stuck in the closet. You're on 101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam.
Sam, we're about to enter into a world of acronyms. So let's start with like the basics. So when we talk about, so one of the words you'll hear used is exposure. So exposure is like when you have an interaction with someone where you may put yourself at risk for contracting HIV. Now, those kinds of interactions are things like I had sex without a condom, or sharing needles, sharing other like bodily fluids like blood.
Yeah, so for instance, if you work in healthcare or prisons, you can be exposed because of accidents rather than because of something you're choosing to do. Exposure isn't always a choice, but there are choices involved.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so now that we've got that part out of the way, we've got pre-exposure prophylaxis. Prophylaxis is probably another word that we need to talk about.
Now, this is shortened to PrEP, and long-time listeners to the show will be familiar with the fact that Andrew has spoken about PrEP several times now, and will be quite familiar with some of this. But, Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit more for people who are just tuning in this week?
So, pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP. It's like a pill that you can take, well, it's not like, it actually is. It is a pill you take once a day, and it reduces your risk of contracting HIV if you are engaging in risky activities. So for most gay boys that go on it, what it means is they take a pill once a day and they have condomless sex without the fear of contracting HIV.
So it's particularly targeted in Australia at men who have sex with men. But just as a prophylaxis, if you're not quite grasping what that means, maybe remember that condoms used to be called prophylactics. It's basically something that's protecting you from some kind of exposure.
Yes, exactly. So we've got pre-exposure prophylaxis, which you take before you have your incident. Your incident might be really fun or it might not be fun.
Before you indulge. And then there is post-exposure prophylaxis, which is called PEP, which sounds really enthusiastic.
So I totally like to think of PEP as being like the morning after pill. So let's imagine that like PrEP is like when you're on the contraceptive pill and PEP is like where you're like, oh, I think I did something last night that I shouldn't have. Let's go and get the medicine to fix it.
It's funny you say that because my biggest experience, not personally, but the stuff that I've largely read on PEP has all been about people who work in things like healthcare and that who are exposed by accident. So rather than somebody making a decision in the heat of the moment, it's somebody who has a needle stick injury or gets a cut during surgery or something, gets a big one for this actually. And it's extremely low risk, but like, people spitting in the eyes of police officers because your eyes basically are directly linked to your bloodstream in a way that your skin isn't. So if stuff gets in your eyes, it gets into your blood. And so it's theoretically a route of transmission for HIV. If somebody's bleeding, that's why they wear eyeglasses.
Yeah. Oh, crazy. Yeah, I did not know. I knew the thing about the eyes, but I didn't think that, like, spit in the eyes was a big deal.
Well, spit in the eyes is probably a bigger thing for other diseases, but it's part of why people who get attacked in some incidents will go on PEP, because they're actually not sure, and it's better to be safe than sorry.
Okay, so, disclaimer, I'm going to be really graphic here. If you don't want to hear anything graphic, turn the radio down for like a minute. So if somebody if you're giving someone a blowjob and it gets in your eye, should you go on PEP, or should you at least go and talk to your doctor about maybe going on PEP?
You should talk to your doctor. As far as I know, there's never been an incident where that's been absolutely outlined as the reason that somebody's got HIV, but there's no reason to say that it couldn't happen that way.
Ah, wow. Okay, so
maybe shut your eyes, Andrew. Maybe shut your eyes.
Sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen.
Maybe direct it lower, anywhere else, not your eyes.
I'm not going to give you the details, but this has happened in the past, let's just say. Now, there is one other acronym, Sam. Let's get the boat back into the right path. There's one other acronym, which is TASP, T-A-S-P, and that's one that we don't hear about so much. It is treatment as prevention. So it's kind of like half an acronym. It really should be TAP if it was a proper acronym. Treatment as prevention. But it's treatment as prevention, T-A-S-P. Anyway, so basically what that means is if you are diagnosed as HIV positive, you start taking treatment and then you get to a point where the levels of the virus are so low in your blood that you can't pass it on to someone else. So you're taking the treatment is really a prevention for other people.
Well, it's a prevention for other people and it's also a treatment for you. So, it's basically the secondary effect of treatment. And it is becoming more and more that it's effective, that people who are on treatment and following and getting their levels checked regularly, are not able to transmit to other people, even if they're positive, which is fantastic, is amazing.
Yeah, I want to share this stat with you, Sam. So basically, in 2016, there was a study that found 0 instances of HIV transmissions when the HIV positive partner was on treatment and was with an undetectable viral load. And they measured couples who had had sex a total of 58,000 times without condoms. So that's pretty convincing results.
Yeah, it's amazing. So exciting. You're on 101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam.
Empty Closet Radio, 9 p.m. Tuesdays, 101.9 Coast FM.
101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam. We've been talking a lot about World AIDS Day because it is coming up on Friday, 1st of December. Put it in your calendar. There's lots of stuff happening in Cairns. Now, we spoke before about PEP, PrEP, TASP, but then there's the other side of World AIDS Day, which is all about caring for people who need a helping hand. And that's really what your donations go to, like when you buy a red ribbon, any of the stuff with the red ribbon logo, all the proceeds from that go towards charities that assist people who are living with HIV. So there's one here which is the one that we've been working with here in Cairns. Hats Off Positive People Hope Fund. And that was established to provide support for people living with HIV experiencing financial hardship, and people who had like some material needs and were looking to improve their lives. So, what that looks like is if you may have HIV and you need a hand with, say, your study fees or some equipment that you might need for your mobility. If you've lost some mobility, then that is the sort of thing that this funding will cater to, and that's the reason why we do the red ribbons and stuff. Most of the other things that you see on World AIDS Day have been donated or like councils given, grants and that sort of thing. So it's really quite a low budget affair.
Yeah, which is something I think gets missed a lot in different chronic illnesses is the fact that it affects everything else in your life, and it's not always, but it can be very hard for people to make ends meet or get that thing that will just make their life a little bit easier.
Well, and also, things like study equipment or things to modify your home to make it more appropriate for your medical condition. It might sound like, they're just getting donations to pay for their HECS fees or whatever. But it's not like, for example, you might have a decreased mobility or decreased ability in one area or another, and you might have to go and study something so that you can change careers.
Yeah, if your career is competitive bloodletting and you become HIV positive, you're probably going to have to change to like puppy wrangling or something, and you need to get your qualification.
Yeah, that's true. Competitive bloodletting, that's definitely right up there.
But things like reduced mobility, reduced ability to work, various things, they do take a toll on other areas of your life, and you need assistance with that.
Okay, so we've got all that out of the way. You'll see lots of red ribbons on the Esplanade this Friday. So that's the 1st of December, Friday, the Esplanade from 10 a.m.
10 till 2. Come and see us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be there. It's on the Western Events lawn, and we're going to have a giant red ribbon. Like, literally, it's so tall.
We have photos, Andrew and I, of us like posing and hugging the ribbon and doing really dramatic like dance number arms out, legs spread. So you can take photos with the ribbon. It's kind of fun.
Think jazz hands plus legs spread. I'll leave that image for you there. But there's lots of other stuff happening there. Like there's going to be information stalls. So if any of the stuff that we've talked about today has got you thinking, maybe I need to find out more about that, the people who you need to talk to, they're going to be there on the Esplanade this Friday. There's free food, so you can come down in your lunch break. And also, if you feel so inclined, there's free testing available as well. So you're able to get usually a very quick result about as to what your HIV status actually is. And that's a really good idea, particularly if maybe you've never even thought about getting a test, or maybe you've been with the one partner for a number of years and you thought, we're only sleeping with each other. Who needs to do that? Great opportunity. It's right there. It takes hardly any time at all. And then you know for sure. And of course you should be getting tested very regularly anyway, but I'm sure the nurse will tell you all about that. Later on that night, there is something happening. Well, there's two things happening later that night. There's a candlelit vigil from 6 through till 7, and that is at sunset time down on the Esplanade. And can I say, Sam, every year that I go to this candlelit vigil, I cry my little eyes out. It is so moving. It's not a religious thing, but it's just a time where we're able to remember the people that have been affected by HIV.
And, particularly for some of the older members of our community, especially, so many people were lost, and it's not like my cousin's ex-girlfriend's brother's in-laws twice removed, lost somebody. Like it's a real thing. Like it's a personal experience.
Yeah, no, it is. I don't have personal experience of anyone that I know being, leaving this world because of HIV. However, I do see the stigma that's attached to his diagnosis, and I cry about the number of amazing people that have walked out of his life because they're too scared to educate themselves about it. So yeah, there's lots of networking to be done on that night, and you'll meet lots of people who you probably don't see out on the scene very much otherwise. But if you are interested to then see all the people that you do normally see on the scene, that night there is a fundraiser. So Out is doing a fundraiser. The proceeds are going to go to World AIDS Day. It's called Glitter Ball, and it's wear red, so it brings in the red ribbon idea, but it's also a little bit Christmassy themed, so I'm expecting a sexy Santa Claus as well.
Are you accepting that Christmas is finally here? Because you put up an angry post about hearing Christmas carols far too early.
I have embraced Christmas. It's okay, so it's the 28th now, so it's less than a month to go till Christmas. I think I can deal with it for a month.
And we'll talk more about that next week, won't we?
Absolutely we will. You're on 101.9 Coast FM in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam.
Heart's an empty space, and my shadow starts to fade.
Empty Closet Radio. Follow us on Twitter.
You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam. That is literally all we've got time for. We've gone so overboard. If you would like to find out anything further about the World AIDS Day celebrations, please head to your favourite social media page and search for CANS HIV WAD. So that's CANS HIV WAD, and you'll be able to find out further information, or you can call the people who are sorting it out. They're on 404-15451. So that's 404-15451.
And you can also check out our social media page on the Big Blue Book of Faces, Empty Closet Radio. Hit the like button. We'll have some links up there. And you can, of course, check us out on the Blue Tweety Bird at emptycloset_AU, all lowercase. And if you missed those details, you can listen again to this episode on the podcast and make sure you write it all down. Just look for Empty Closet Radio on your favorite podcasting app and hit the like button. Oh, sorry, the subscribe button.
Yeah, subscribe. Don't do liking on the podcast. Just subscribe. It's great. And you can listen back to all our previous amazing episodes, some of our previous average episodes as well. That's all we've got time for. You're on 101.9 Coast FM. You're in the Empty Closet with Andrew and Sam.
Look around at the sights in open view. There's a moment that hides in front of
Thanks for listening to The Empty Closet, brought to you by 1019 Coast FM Cairns.